Hi, my name is Rich Schmidt. I'm here with Don Olson at Torii Mor Winery. It's August 7th, 2017. And Don, we're going to start with a nice easy question, which is why wine?
Why wine? Interesting question. I'm a physician, and I've always been intrigued by science and always intrigued by the idea that wine is a living substance. And the question is, how can you make a living substance into a industry, in effect? And you can. The wine cell has in it a mitochondria, it has lysosomes, it has all the things that human cells have, basically. And so the intrigue with this is immense, and I guess that's why wine. And
so how did you get introduced to the organ industry?
Totally by accident. The situation was I had a son that a lot smarter than me, I might add. Young people are, and he pointed out to me in no uncertain terms how I messed up and did not grasp onto the future of Nike, and said that he wanted to be a winemaker and wanted to come to Oregon. Of course, he had a girlfriend, and I thought that was probably the justification. But in any event, that happened, and then unfortunately he was killed in a car accident, and shortly after his 21st birthday, and so I felt that I had to follow through with that.
So how did you go, when you decided you wanted to be part of it, how did you go about sort of learning what you needed to know?
Well, I don't know that I have ever found out what I need to know, but I a long time ago, I came from Wisconsin, and there, a couple hundred years ago, there was a wine industry there, but and there's some now, but there wasn't any to speak of for at that period of time, and in the early 80s and in the 70s. And so what happened there was, on my internship in San Francisco, not having any money, I would frequently go to the wine country and enjoy and learn, and started taking some courses that I would get up very early to watch on TV and learn from. And then, by the grace of God and good luck, I won a fellowship to go any place in the world I wanted to go, and I went to France, and there I asked the question of every place I visited, why was it that this wine from one place tasted different than a wine from another place? And the answer was always the same: terroir. And of course, the French said it in a way that made me remember. And the idea then came to me that this was something I needed to explore. And of course, eventually it became the basis of the name Torii Mor, which means a gate to the earth. It was my way of saying terroir. And which basically I created the name. And the Torii being the gates with the two on the side, on the top rather, that are so important in the some of the religion of Japan, and I've been intrigued by the Asian philosophy for all my life, and a fan of Frank Lloyd Wright all of my life, so it's kind of where we landed, and. One of those roads we took a journey on, and here we ended up.
So from San Francisco then, and from the kind of the Napa Valley area, how did you end up here? How did you find the Olson Estate Vineyard?
Well, I came up here to look at places in 1985, and had read in the Wall Street Journal preceding that probably the best place to grow Pinot Noir in the world was in the Dundee Hills, so I wanted to go see what's happening here. And I visited here on a Saturday morning and basically made an offer to the McDaniels that afternoon.
What made it special to you? Why the spot?
This garden. my life was very busy at that time, and I found tranquility here, and I found thought and still think I can sit here and hear the bugs, and which is special to me. And so the idea of harmony and balance and is everything, and it's here, and the karma is here, and that's what great wine is, and I wanted to be a part of that. So.
Tell me a little bit more about that. We talked a little bit before the camera about balance and wine. What is balance and why is it so important?
Well, balance, obviously, you refer back to the science and chemistry, and we're always looking at our acids and our sugars and all these other things, and everything. In my life as a physician, when I see pain patients who have very complicated situations, and you have to try to teach them how to live with certain problems, and I use the explanation that minestrone soup has lots of stuff in it, and the idea of balancing every piece that's in that minestrone soup together is what balance is, and it's difficult, and to find harmony means it needs to be smooth, alive, and to at least to me, it has to fit the basic characters that I'm looking for in a great wine, and so which of course I like, up front, forward, blackberry, cherry, the feeling of never should bite you, and great velvet on the palate, and a finish that never quits, and all the good things about what I love, a great white wine, or great red wine, which happens to be Pinot Noir, and here we are, the best place I think in the world for Pinot Noir, and one of the early vineyards that Jim McDaniel planted, that was planted with love, and sits here today, and producing, I believe, some great fruit.
So what is it that makes Pinot Noir special or challenging?
Thin skin, complicated development. I've tried to answer that question lots of times, and I really don't know the answer. And I've been through another part of my life, literally all over the world, and I was in the Caucasus, for example, and in the Republic of Georgia, which a lot of people think that's where Pinot Noir probably started, at least some people do. And they had Pinot Noir there literally growing out on the ground flat, and pretty well documented for at least 5,000 years and maybe longer. And trellising techniques that here we think, a trellising technique, we kind of developed it yesterday, but the reality was it's been around for a long time, and it's the concepts of farming. It turns out that these people, these forebears that we had, were pretty smart, and there's a lot of things to be learned by just sitting back and listening. Again, the theory of being in the garden, harmony and balance, and tranquility enough to listen to see what's really there, and ask the question why at least 5 times.
So you started the vineyard, and then a little bit later is when you started the label, the Torii Mor label. What made you decide to start the label?
It was, we'd sold some fruit that was considered very high caliber, and in 1987, and along with Jim Marsh, and we did some Chardonnay that was ranked very high, and then thereafter we did the idea of maybe starting a winery and putting something together here. It seemed like just a reasonable idea, and obviously if I knew all the things then that I know now, it's like everything, if you knew everything in the early phases, you'd probably run in the opposite direction, but as it turns out this telephone call I just had a few minutes ago was from an old friend that I've known forever, who coincidentally was my attorney when I won a malpractice case against an attorney, which was the money I used to start this winery. So we've been friends ever since, you know. So
it's pretty funny timing.
Yeah, coincidence, totally. I did not tell him about this interview. Or, it was just coincidence. His son had a brain tumor, and so we became friends. And I've known something about brain tumors over the years, and so.
So what you mentioned, like if you knew now what you knew then, you might not have done it. What were some of the challenges in the early days?
Well, the weather, the issue of finding people who understood the grape, and which I applaud you guys for doing your program that you're doing, and because education's everything, and so working with something as challenging as the grape to produce a product that has a million different responses from different people, and excites different parts of the neuroanatomy. For example, olfaction and smell, and some people believe, and I think it's true, and that we have a huge number of receptors in the olfactory system. Some people say many as a trillion, and that these receptors obviously are what we base a lot of our wine appreciation on, and so you can't really taste until you smell, and the combination of the two is something that is a part of that evaluation that we do when we take up a piece of glass, and put a wine in it and appreciate it. And first, putting our nose in the glass to smell, and swirling and allowing it to be in our mouths to appreciate its flavors and its touch, and that opportunity to kind of move out of yourself for a moment and become somebody who is intrigued with the science and chemistry of life. And it sounds maybe crazy, but it is what it is.
I don't think it sounds crazy.
Well, everybody else, lots of people think it's crazy. So, and of course, I come from originally Wisconsin, where, if it didn't have ketchup on it, it wasn't good, and meatloaf was the drug of choice, or the food of choice, and the drug of choice was heavy, hard brandy, and for cold days watching football games. So all of that's changing. So,
how did you develop your palate?
I developed a taste for initially the big Zinfandels, and moved on from there, basically speaking, and it's amazing. You get pretty good at it after a while, but it does take a while, and I believe that the ladies have a much finer ability to evaluate wine than we as guys do. And the older we get less sensitive, so to speak, in our palate, and I think anyway, and I think that's the reason why you'll find older guys liking the Tabasco sauce on everything, so which takes away a lot of flavor. So
as you're developing your own palate, and as you start making wine for other people, did you find that most people liked what you liked? Did you find you had to kind of change your winemaking to fit other people's tastes?
Come on, I'm a neurosurgeon. You know the answer to that. Neurosurgeons are control freaks, and I'm guilty. I'm sorry, but I'm guilty. It is what I am, and you can't do that kind of stuff and not be a control freak. And I loved what I did. So
do you have as you developed your developed your practices over the years, did you come to like a philosophy, a vineyard philosophy, or a winery philosophy?
Well, it's the same philosophy I hope I have in everything, and it is a desire to appreciate myself and to reflect the reality of what nature has offered us, and I don't think it can be better expressed than as it is in this. For example, in this garden that Jim had created, and in the spring when these trees are all flowering, it's an amazing experience. And working from a big city surroundings much of my life, it's quite a change, and I appreciate it.
And so I know as you've developed this over the years, you've also, sustainability has become a much bigger idea in wine and in local food. So talk about how sustainability practices have influenced your vineyard and your winery.
Well, that's an interesting question, though, and I'm not sure I know how to answer it, frankly. The idea of longevity is everything. All of us want to live forever, don't we? And what is it that makes some of us live longer than others? Most of the time, that's DNA. And should we be monitoring the DNA in grapes? In many respects, we do. And the soil is everything that it comes from. We talk about things that were done 1,000 years ago and trying to find which was the best place to plant grapes or anything for that nature, and biodynamic farming is basically that. But it is a way to track the microbes and the yeast in the soil, and everybody's trying to do that. There's a company contacted me the other day that they want me to be involved with, and that's what they do. They do DNA of the microbes that are in the soil, and then monitor that, and then do analytics. And in my opinion, the world of medicine, at least, is changing, and I think soon so will the world of wine, and it'll all change with analytics. And by that, it's just purely getting a data file large enough to have something to calculate, and then it's all math, and getting in statistics a p-score, and the correct number to strive for is a 0.003, which is 99.7% accuracy and predictability. And I got interested in analytics only because I was in Las Vegas at the medical school there, and got a lot of friends in the casino business, and they all indicated that one of their number one problems was cheating, fraud, and so they worked out a program with a computer genius friend of mine, and who was doing a lot of work for the military, and that really did a profile, and so when a person that came in that they could spot, and they could quickly focus a minimum of 14 cameras, and many times many more, and I'm sure they wouldn't want me to tell you how many more, and they could have them within seconds on the person in question, and analyze basically everything they do, and then including their face recognition and the oil on their nose and everything, and before the person could do say a second hand of whatever game they were playing, they could have them categorized, and if they were cheating, could in good comfort zone say so, and escort them out of the casino with their winnings from their first hand, but tell them in a nice way not to ever come back again. And they found that to be very successful, and that seemed to be intriguing, and as you apply that to other areas, it works. And I have a son-in-law who is a NASA scientist, and they have these satellites roaming around the world. And what I didn't know was satellites can have sensors that can do just about everything. And in the old days, it was just CO2, but with CO2, you could monitor the vineyard very nicely. With the growth and vigor is going to show a vigorous area on CO2 and a production, and of course an area that is potentially diseased or not getting enough nourishment is not going to. And you could then plot that out in your vineyard and know pretty well where you are. Water flow is important. Water flow changes as you go, and of course we look at everything two-dimensionally, and unfortunately that's not the way the world is. The world is three-dimensional, and that is that water goes in the circle like rifling down a barrel, and so where you measure it is it's like in a stream. It's not the same, and it always curves, and that's also true in the human body. And the spinal fluid from our brain down to our spine goes the same way, in a spiral type way, and which creates certain anomalies in medicine and neurosurgery that we have to be aware of. And but that's intriguing to me. And so doing this tidbit of testing, and now with drones, which are approved for vineyards, and which I've had the privilege of being a part of or invited to since the beginning here in Yamhill County. And the Yamhill County's done a great job of getting ahead of that on drones. And I had a friendship with Dale Smith, and it's an area of interest that I think is just scratching the surface.
So what do you think will happen with it? What will it do to the wine industry in the next couple of decades?
I think we'll get better and better wine. And where that goes, I don't know. But I think we will get better wine in terms of our appreciation for what we know to be quality at the present time. I believe the Dundee Hills are the New World Grand Cru, and I believe this is the center of the great wines of the world.
And speaking of that, we talked a little bit about the new clone you're planting. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, this is Dickie Reth 117, and it is, I think, very special. He picked it up a long time ago from France, from Claude Vougeot, and brought it to Davis, and they put it through the testing and came up with a clearance, which is effective the first of the year, going to be called the Reth 117 clone, and which I think is a big deal. And I've tasted the wine made from it, and I've seen the numbers. They're really quite good, and it's important to look at, what the tannins are and the acids and all these things. And it's like Shakespeare said, everything changes but nothing changes. It's still great wine, but on the other hand, it's important to get the right calculations to get to the great wine. So
did you have a vision for Torii Mor when you started, or for the vineyard, and how has it changed?
I don't think anything's changed. I think everything is what it is, and I always thought that being part of an industry would be a great way to retire, and what I thought would be a retirement, and hasn't quite worked out that way, I might add. But everyone dreams of being a gentleman farmer, but it's hard to be a gentleman farmer. So I come from a family of pioneers that cut a piece of land out of nothing in Wisconsin in 1836, and made it into a thriving farm. And being Norwegians, they would choose to do something next to impossible, and they grew tobacco. in Wisconsin, and did it well, and became the supplier for the Dutch Master cigar for the wrappers. And I had a grandfather who was an absolute perfectionist, tough as nails, and did what he did, and I was proud of him. So, and I hope I can measure up. So.
Speak on that note, what are you proudest of here?
Well, I think the idea is one that we've seen growth and that we've seen recognition, and it may be in some respects a spiritual change that I think is occurring within our whole society. I put on a bunch of solar and took and followed what I call the eco-tourism and early in the game, and we were one of the I guess booster child of the state energy department initially, and I think that's an important thing. Now, whether we're going to see solar as the means for all things in the future, I don't know, but I do know that we have 250 solar panels over on our winery, and it's fun to watch the meter go backwards on a nice sunny day. So.
And you're also involved in live and LEED certified as well?
We do all of those, and so again, you don't know exactly how important they are, but they were important to me, and I did them. So.
And so what's in the future for Torii Mor, other than your exciting new clones? What else is in the future?
Well, we have some of the best water in the world here. And I've tested it, and it has no contamination, and it has better numbers than bottled Voss water, and it is sitting underneath us right as we speak, and there's a big aquifer there that came into being when the Missoula floods came across 10,000 years ago and created this, and it's probably going to last another couple hundred years. Maybe, I'll probably be that old, I suppose. But anyway, and I'm kidding. And it is what it is, and I think it's going to be a part of the future. And I think it's a part of the reason why the Dundee Hills are so special, and because. What do they say in the old Olympic brewery that's in the water? I think that's true. And, but it's also in the dirt, and it's also in the yeast, and it's also in the people who put their hands to it, and it's also in the passion that exists that every facility has to have in order to go. So.
And you talked a little bit about this earlier, but the future of the Oregon wine industry in general, I'm curious what your thoughts are on what it's going to look like.
Well, I wish I could answer that one, and I don't know. I think it's crazy out there right now, but that's my opinion. And so.
Do you think it's going to keep growing?
I don't know. Every time I think something, I say it out loud, something happens that's different, and so I've somebody said in college, it's better to keep your mouth shut and be thought a fool rather than open it and prove it. And so I just sit back and listen.
I respect that. What advice would you have for someone who wanted to join the wine industry?
Be careful. Be passionate. Don't ever give up.
And what do you hope will happen here on your property? If you ever do get to retire, what happens next?
I think they'll bury me, because I don't think I'm going to retire. So this is a beautiful place. Why leave it? So
makes sense to me. That's all the questions I have for you. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything I should have asked that I didn't?
I don't know what it would be. I suppose after a few glasses of wine, I'd think of something, but it's early in the morning here, so come on. Not yet.
Not yet.
So, but young people are going to change things, and because they think differently, and they should. And as they experience what has been, it took me a long time to get smart. I think that's not unusual, and wisdom is something you gain, and nothing remains the same. But you go through transitions, and I hope this world learns to slow down.
Some good words to end on. I like that.
So,
Well, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
thank you.